Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Seattle, Washington, July 31st, 2025. Harold Powell, age 68, is a Navy veteran who lives in Seattle. In the service, he had been a submariner. His career, however, was cut short when he was struck by a drunk driver in 1991. Since '95, he's been playing music for donations on Seattle's waterfront. He's regarded fondly by the people there and described as a regular, usually playing music and bringing a good vibe to the waterfront. People are used to peace and quiet and pleasantries there on the piers, but white supremacy has created a class of super predators who break the peace. As we've seen in so many other instances, a white man showed up and started an argument with Mr. Powell for no reason. According to the criminal complaint against him, the perpetrator approached the victim, who was in a wheelchair on the boardwalk near Starbucks, and he demanded the victim provide identification to prove his military status. As the victim was taking out his wallet, the white man who accosted him then removed a military patch from the victim's belongings. This caused the victim to arm himself with a knife. The white man pulled out a handgun, pointed it at the victim, and shot him point blank in the chest. Now, this was a racial ambush, and if you look at the video, you see the guy standing several feet away from the victim. He wasn't standing right on top of him. There was no imminent threat or imminent anything. He didn't just happen to show up there that day, by the way, armed with a .45 caliber pistol. He started an argument with a complete stranger in a wheelchair. He went there to carry out a broad daylight murder. He had that in his empty head before he even went there. Now, today, Harold is recovering at home. He had been released from the hospital on Sunday. The perpetrator has been identified as 32-year-old Gregory Tim, and he's already trying to claim some sort of self-defense, but prosecutors have said regarding self-defense in Washington state case law, a defendant cannot claim self-defense if the defendant provoked the altercation. If you provoke an attack upon yourself, you lose the right to claim self-defense. But of course, these white supremacists are on code nationwide. Prosecutors are admitting the most obvious thing of all about the no self-defense argument here. He walked up on a wheelchair-bound elderly old man, accosted him, argued with him, stole property off of his person, and then attempted to murder him. Prosecutors are not charging this animal with murder, though. Instead, all this attempted murder is being charged with is first-degree assault. The judge even offered this reprobate bail, $750,000. This was attempted murder, not a fistfight. But you have prosecutors attempting to protect this would-be killer, and they're doing it openly. And you won't be surprised to learn that this isn't this criminal's first brush with the law. Back in 2020, as the pandemic was getting started, this criminal lived in Jacksonville, Florida. That's moron DeSantis' Florida, mind you. In this criminal act, Tim took his van and deliberately drove it into a tent full of political volunteers who were conducting a voter registration drive. That time, he was charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault on a person 65 years old or older, and single counts each of criminal mischief and driving with a suspended license. His bail in that case was set at $500,000. Even Donald Trump, who was president at the time, weighed in on that incident, so even the president was aware of this case. And yet, in moron DeSantis' Florida, he got the same charges and even the same bail amount as what he got earlier this month. And if you're wondering whatever became of that case against him in Florida, a year later he went to trial and was acquitted on all charges except the criminal mischief charge. The judge immediately let him go with time served. It took that Florida jury less than an hour to call him not guilty, so they had their minds made up beforehand. And if you'd like to know what mind-blowing, incredible evidence that this violent punk's defense lawyers offered to beat the rap, they had him take the stand and say it was all just a joke. No, I'm being literal about that. That's what he actually said. He took the stand and said that trying to run people over with a van was just a prank. Quote, "Crashing is a strong word. I still consider it was a prank. It was the most stupid thing I have ever done, and I have had a lot of time to reflect on this." You know, that reminds me of one of Paul Mooney's comedy routines. "White man, why did you try to run over a bunch of people with your van?" "It was just a prank. I've had a lot of time to reflect on it." "Ooh, he said it was just a prank. We can't send him to prison for a prank. Besides, he's had some time to reflect on it, and that's enough." Now you let a black person be charged with the same thing. "Hey, nigger, why did you try to run people over with your van?" "It was just a prank. I've had a lot of time to reflect on this." "Well, your prank wasn't funny, and you're going to have 25 years to reflect on it." But this happened in Ron DeSantis' Florida, when he was bragging that they're so tough on crime, and Trump, the president himself, commented on it, so we see for the umpteenth time that where these red state reprobates are concerned, when they talk about being tough on crime, that doesn't include white offenders. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power Tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. This degenerate did this in Jacksonville, Florida, and he was given a slap on the wrist. This is the same Jacksonville where only 2 years ago a white supremacist, inspired by Ron DeSantis' anti-black crusading, murdered 3 black citizens in cold blood. That was the direct result of DeSantis' nonstop anti-black rhetoric and political performative extremism. It was meant to embolden precisely that kind of violence, and that's what it did. And now this creep has gone to Washington state and committed a far worse crime than the one he had 5 years ago, and the authorities there are treating this as just criminal mischief. When this happens, these are not oversights. This is not the system failing. This is the system working exactly the way it's designed. This system was designed to produce targeted harassment and mass incarceration of black people, regardless of whether they committed a crime or not, and is designed to not touch those classified as white at all unless they kill a white person. Then there may be some minor punishment, but as I documented for you on this channel, that's not always guaranteed. And the people who administrate this injustice system, they're the ones responsible for it. DeSantis and his gang of inbreds down there were all hot and bothered to write laws meant to target black people. They wrote a law to legalize hitting protesters with your vehicle as a direct response to the BLM protest. Well, you have a white man who tries to run over campaign volunteers with his van, Republican volunteers no less. And DeSantis and the tough-on-crime Republican legislators didn't pass one law. They didn't do anything. And when he was acquitted, there was no legislative response from the GOP legislature in Tallahassee either. The system is color-coded because the racists who administrate it operate it that way. They're the ones who make sure that it stays that way. We keep having these incidents over and over and over again on a near-daily basis, where you got some white man with a gun who runs around acting like he's playing out some death wish vigilante fantasy. Be it Kyle Rittenhouse, Daniel Penny, Daniel Perry, the racist in Texas who killed a white BLM activist and Greg Abbott pardoned him, or this latest scumbag in Seattle. This is white privilege. This is racial immunity from law. Because you never see a black person shoot a white person, veteran or not, wheelchair-bound or not, and then simply get an assault charge. Racially privileged armed thugs are protected in this society, and that's why we see so many mass murders take place by the exact same demographic. Be honest. If the headlines said that this blonde 32-year-old male had gone to the riverfront in Seattle and just began shooting people at random, just opened up on them, would that be a surprise? Would anyone say, I can't believe someone would just open fire on people for no reason at all? When have any of these racially privileged punks ever needed a reason for suddenly firing on people? This crime in Seattle didn't happen because of an argument. He went there with a gun specifically because he intended to kill someone from the very beginning. And these murderers are protected to commit these crimes, whether it be in a red state or a blue one like Washington. Seattle's supposed to be so liberal. That's how they promote themselves. Why they had BLM protests 5 years ago. And there was even a brief Occupy movement. Well, you're seeing exactly how liberal it actually is. When it comes time for them to actually have to confront the reality of racial immunity from law and white privilege, that's when you find out whether or not these people are actually real about law and order. And time again, consistently, we've seen they're not. They're all about a color-coded injustice system. Because as far as they're concerned, they have to protect the racial immunity from law that trash like this Tim character enjoy, because it's what the rest of them also depend on for their own perks, privileges, and racial guarantees. And that's the reason why when it comes to black people in general, you can't be running around just with a knife at a gunfight. You gotta be prepared to protect yourself and not be asking permission. That's the reality when you live under a system of white supremacy. Self-protection for black people is a must wherever we are. And it doesn't matter if you're out and about, at home, or on the riverfront, just minding your own business. White supremacy is always looking for the next soft target. And if they decide that they're going to try to come after you, you gotta be prepared to let them know that it doesn't matter if you're in a wheelchair or not. You won't be taking white supremacist aggression sitting down. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Mouse, Isaac, Alan Reese, Gregory Franklin, and Faith Speaks Life. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.